Welcome to this Triangles webinar for Monday, January 12th, 2026. This is the first Triangles webinar of this year. My name is Mintze van der Velde and the webinar of today is managed by Geneva. As a special guest today we have Janna van Balen, who is in the Netherlands, and she is a co-worker of the Dutch desk. She will share with us some thoughts on triangles, idea and form. The monthly Triangles webinars have two major goals, both of which seek to strengthen the planetary network. The first is to have a space where existing Triangles members can come together to share in a meditative visualization in support of the Triangles work, and to hear reflections and share ideas about world service through the power of thought from different Triangles co-workers. The second is to introduce new people to Triangles and hopefully stimulate the formation of new Triangles. If you already have a Triangle or you are a Triangles member, you may also want to form a new Triangle. We will begin with some introductory remarks about triangles and the use of the Great Invocation, followed by a visualization on that Great Invocation, which regular participants of this webinar are familiar with. Then we will have the talk by our guest Janna, followed by some time for discussion. As usual, you can put your questions in the chat or raise your hand and we will give you the floor. We will conclude with a Triangles webinar meditation, energizing the planetary network of triangles. If you are new to Triangles, you can find all information on the Triangles website, www.triangles.org, about how to form a triangle, including a section where you can form a triangle online, by entering your details and inviting others to contact you to form such a triangle. About 70 years ago, the Tibetan wrote in his book Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2, and I quote, "People recognize the present darkness and misery and consequently welcome light. Men are tired of hating and fighting, and therefore welcome goodwill." End of quote. This was after the World War. Thereafter we have seen a time of relative optimism, rebuilding of a more prosperous world, and relative peace. People were, and still are, able to travel, and thus meet people of other cultures, nations, habits, people of different color, different face, etc. If we cannot go physically to other countries, the internet and modern technologies allow us to visit virtually any spot of planet Earth. Therefore, from that perspective, we might expect that what we vaguely understand by the term brotherhood is gradually taking shape. The Tibetan reminds us that what we usually understand by brotherhood is as the one father and his children, or something of the like. That understanding, according to the Tibetan, is in itself so limited and inaccurate that it serves mainly to distort the truth. Yet all that we can grasp at this time is embodied in this concept. He goes on to say that brotherhood, as it essentially is, constitutes a major mystery. It would go far beyond the framework of this webinar to explore the concept of brotherhood further. Just keep in mind that there is, as so often is the case, a much deeper meaning to the word of brotherhood. There is a deeper meaning to the word of triangles too, and Jana will later in this webinar explore some of the more deeper aspects of triangles. Perhaps we could explore this also further in another forthcoming Triangles webinar. We know through the law of correspondences that what is happening in the life of one human being has its correspondence to what is happening to humanity as a whole. Largely generalizing and loosely speaking, one could say that human beings evolve from a state of ignorance to one of individual consciousness, followed by one of soul or group consciousness. Transposing this to the level of nations, a similar pattern can be seen, where after long times of wars and battle, eventually the souls of nations urge them to cooperate. This was clearly visible in the period after the Great War, that is to say, between 1945 and 2000. Thereafter, however, and despite the efforts of cooperation, several nations started to retract or focus on themselves. In a way, this is reflected on the level of human beings too, where, amplified by social media, we observe a huge degree of individualism and polarization accompanied by an extreme level of materialism. All this is, of course, happening on the outer plane, that's to say, in the world of daily living. As triangle workers, we are focusing on the inner planes, that's to say, the invisible worlds that lie behind these outer phenomena. Reminding that forever the occult law holds good, as above, so below, we are told that the reorganization of planetary affairs, which is taking place at this time, is partially the effect of the changes produced in the hierarchy by two major factors. One, the higher and more intelligent type of disciple who is now affiliating with the ashram and his instinctive demand for group work and recognition. And two, the new energies pouring through Shambhala into hierarchy. These, we are told, are of an extraplanetary nature and have their source largely in the Aquarian quality of the present cycle. These energies are steadily eliminating the energies of the Piscean age. The passage from the Piscean to the Aquarian age is not an automatic nor a smooth process. These incoming energies, which undoubtedly are there and are potent at the same time, do need anchor points on this planet to have their necessary impact. If this is the bigger picture, what can we do as Triangle members on our own level, on our own scale? Of course, we do our Triangle each day, but as we will see from the talk of Jana in a minute, there's much more than just doing our Triangle. In the period after the Great War, the Tibetan urged all men and women of goodwill to use the Great Invocation as much as possible. He also urged us to use it as good as possible. That is to say, with the deepest understanding of its meaning we, as Triangle workers, can achieve in our consciousness. If you are a regular participant of this Triangles webinar, you will note that each time we do the visualization on the Great Invocation. Of course, we know that you are no stranger to the Great Invocation. Yet, this visualization can help us to achieve that deeper understanding in our consciousness. Keeping in mind that energy follows thought, this will help to keep our triangles work vibrant and energetic. Thus, its effect on the inner planes will be more potent, something which is so strongly needed in these challenging times. So we will now have our visualization, a reflection on the great invocation. Link in thought as a soul, as a point of love and light, with all those people throughout the world who are part of the Triangle Service work. Visualize the world situation as best you can and see people everywhere glowing with a dim light, and here and there points of brighter light where men and women of spiritual intention and of loving hearts are working for their fellow human beings. Then visualize through the creative imagination the vivid light of the spiritual kingdom streaming towards humanity and slowly merging with the light which is already in humanity. Then we say the first stanza of the adapted Great Invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, Let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. Then ponder upon the reappearance of the coming world teacher. Realize that no matter by what name he may be called in the many world religions, he is still the same great identity. Reflect and speculate upon the possible results of his appearance. Then we say the second stanza of the Great Invocation. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. Then endeavor to concentrate your fixed intention to serve and to spread love in your surroundings, and realize that insofar as can do these things, you are attempting to blend your personal will with the divine will. Then we say stanza 3 of the invocation. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. Then we sound the Om, dedicating the threefold personality to the working out of the divine plan. Thank you very much. We are now going to listen to Janne van Balen, who will talk on triangles, idea and form. Janne, you have the floor.
Thank you, Minze. It's a pleasure for me to explore some thoughts on the triangle work with you today. When I started my own psychosynthesis practice over 25 years ago, I named it Triagonales, which means like a triangle. With this, I wanted to express the importance I attach to the power of the triangle, both as an idea and in its formative effect. The triangle work is part of the relatively new teachings, new also in their impact upon consciousness, which the Tibetan gave to humanity almost a century ago. Today, we will focus our attention on the triangle work, although it's only one of these teachings. And we want to reflect on the relationship between idea and form, and how this can lead to surprising insights at a deeply esoteric level. The Tibetan mentioned the triangle work in relation to the teaching about the work of the new group of world servers. He describes it as, on the one hand, the phase of forming a network of light that serves as a channel for communication between the hierarchy and humanity. And, on the other hand, as the simultaneous formation of a network of goodwill, which is equivalent to the objective expression of the subjective influence of light. Although the two networks are not identical, they are closely intertwined. At a deeply esoteric level, these two networks relate to the fundamental triangle of energy formed by the three Buddhas of activity. Together with Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the World, these four embody active, intelligent, and loving will. They represent the full flowering of intelligence, having achieved in a previous solar system what humanity is now striving to perfect in our current solar system. It is said that as networks of triangles are built and formed, the invocation is, in essence, directed toward one of the Buddhas of activity. And when the energy of this invocation is strong enough, a response will come. All of this creates a remarkably sublime picture. And it is precisely this that makes the triangle work simultaneously so simple and so difficult. It is precisely this sublime relationship that makes it exceptionally complex for some, hindering clear thinking about its essential simplicity. Others, however, consider the work very simple. They emphasize its exoteric and organizational aspects. According to the Tibetan, both ways of thinking may hinder the true purpose of triangle work. Therefore, he calls on us to become aware of the true plan underlying the triangle work. He also emphasizes the paramount importance of learning the true function of the triangles. The work of the triangles must be continued, according to the Tibetan. But at the same time, he says, this work is so new and so different from anything previously conceived that it seems unlikely to succeed. This is an intriguing observation that invites further reflection, and we will attempt to utilize the resulting tension between the work's importance and its unfamiliarity to clarify our thinking about the triangles. Underlying this tension is another tension, namely that between complexity and simplicity, both of which the Tibetan says they may distort the intention of the triangle work. The Tibetan is very clear about the purpose of forming triangles of light and goodwill. He says that the forming has to do with the reservoir of energy on the inner and etheric side of life, which automatically and with a fully circulating effect will enable the exoteric work of men and women of goodwill to progress. It is not goodwill as such, but a deliberate formation of triangles in the etheric body of the planet, qualified by goodwill. A subtle distinction emerges here, one that seems essential for properly understanding the function of the triangle work. On the one hand, there is the inner and subjective work of the triangles, and on the other, the outer and objective work of goodwill. They complement each other, but are not the same. Forming the triangles is clearly expressed as the goal the Tibetan has in mind, but there seems to be a higher purpose beyond that, which has not yet become explicit. What is being said here is that in the triangle work, it is not first an idea or ideal that is realized in form, but rather a form or structure is first created, the network of triangles. This network builds up a reservoir of qualified energy, endowed with the quality of goodwill, and through which, and only then, can a hitherto latent idea shine forth and become active. In this sense, the triangle work is certainly not a moral call or an ideological movement, but strictly speaking, an almost meditative technical preparation for creating a reservoir of energy. So much for the work itself. And from here on, we'll focus on its background. Now that it's becoming clear that the triangle work is indeed new and different from anything designed or conceived before. To understand why this work is so new, we will first consider the fundamental relationship between idea and form. This means that the search for the exact meaning of a word, which means its form, is the starting point. Because it is a law that every form of divine revelation must correspond exactly to its name. And let's take the word triangle. In its first, purely linguistic meaning, a triangle is the compound of tri plus angle. And this word designates a figure or shape characterized by 3 angles and thus 3 sides. More concisely, we can say it's a plane figure bounded by 3 lines that together form 3 angles. Or the shortest way to express this word, that which has 3 angles. Going a step further, just beyond the purely linguistic meaning, to what you might call the conceptual meaning, you could say that a triangle is a basic geometric shape created when 3 points are connected by 3 lines, creating a closed hole. Here, the focus is no longer on the word, but on a principle of order. We then know that a triangle consists of 3 separate elements that relate to each other and together form a closed structure. It is a more abstract level, but still can be imagined, visualized, and also applied. Taking a further step from structure to relational meaning, a triangle can be described as a structure of 3 interconnected elements, each element deriving its meaning from its relationship to the other 2, and stability arising from mutual tension and balance. Here, the points of the triangle are no longer primarily seen as shapes, but as positions or functions. This means that the individual elements, the person connected to a triangle, as such, cannot stand alone without disrupting the whole. And at this point, we can begin to understand what the Tibetan meant by overly complex or overly simple thinking, distorting the triangle work. An overly complex way of thinking could lead to the living relationship between the 3 elements being replaced by either excessive conceptual layering or by a loss of dynamic balance. We can translate this practically, for example, to those moments when concrete and analytical mind take center stage. As a result, relationships are no longer experienced, but rather explained. The whole of the triangle then loses its function as a carrier of tension and balance and can fall silent. Overly simplistic thinking can also be restrictive. In such cases, the opposite occurs. The differences between the 3 positions or points are flattened. Something similar can reduce the triangle to a line or even a point. Tension is avoided instead of managed. And you could say the triangle collapses. Collaboration is no longer possible. Summarizing, we can say that the true effectiveness of the triangle lies not in increasing or decreasing elements, but in carefully maintaining the tension between three distinct positions. As soon as concrete thinking takes over the tension, causing complexity, or eliminates it, which is simplification, the triangle loses its organizing power. So far, we have approached the triangle at different levels. We first saw her as a form, or a simple geometric figure, and then as a working field of relationships, in which tension and proportion are decisive. Finally, as an attitude of awareness, sustained by goodwill. At this point, something essential emerges. When tension is carried without reducing it and without overloading it, a field is created in which meaning can emerge that is not generated by any of the elements individually. And this brings us to a fourth level, the symbolic level. Here the triangle is no longer seen as a form or structure, but experienced as a principle. The triangle then doesn't signify anything else. It is operative as a field. At this level, goodwill becomes visible as a magnetic quality, not as a moral incentive, but as an organizing force that, like a magnet, attracts iron, attracts the idea and allows it to take root. Without goodwill, the idea remains abstract or crystallizes into ideology. With goodwill, it can become active, embodied in relationship. And from this perspective, the triangle work is seen in a new light. Here, it's not the idea that first forms the form, but rather the form itself that is carefully built. The network of triangles creates a field, a reservoir of qualified energy, in which a hitherto latent idea can then shine forth and function. The idea that takes shape here in the work of the triangles could be described as a potential of electrical current itself, invisible, active within the etheric body of the planet, formed according to laws of balance and proportion. Under the right conditions, meaning no overload, no underload, active and yet receptive. Under these conditions, this field can be connected to the source. What then becomes active belongs neither exclusively to inner experience, nor exclusively to the external world, but to an organizing field in which both mutually enable one another. What can then become visible is not the idea as a concept, but its workings. The example the Tibetan cites here is brotherhood, not as an ideal, but as a living relationship. And once again, the triangle work is not a moral program or an ideological movement, but a silent, persistent, meditative preparation a preparation in which the form is so maintained that it can receive life. May then, when the form is sufficiently built and the tension is purely born, the Buddha of activity become aware of this form, in its nature of light and its quality of goodwill, and let his life flow into it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jana, for this very inspiring and at the same time quite profound talk on the slightly deeper meanings of triangles. If you want to make a comment or have some thoughts, you can either put them in the chat or you can raise your hand and we will give you the floor as usual. As you are thinking about what you're going to ask, I just want to emphasize a little bit some things I picked up in your talk. One was that as a result, relationships are no longer experienced but rather explained. I think it is important to see that the triangle work is to be something to be experienced and not so much explained. In your talk, you say that the Tibetan speaks of two distortions that can obstruct the triangle work, that is to say, too much complexity or too much simplicity. Could you give a practical example of each of these distortions?
Yes, sure. Without wanting to explain too much, because then we just might fall into one of those pitfalls of those distortions ourselves. So I can give some examples on the level of appearances, and probably we all might recognize this. So the distortion through complexity can be described as when the concrete mind takes over the tension which is built up in the triangle. And some people have a tendency to want to reduce tension. And from the perspective of the triangle work, as we have discussed here, that means that the potential is reduced. In other words, the opposite, what is intended, is achieved. So explaining, reasoning things out, or allowing a thought to crystallize into a kind of thing. These are all examples of distortion through complexity. And questions, we might ask, am I understanding this correctly? Or am I doing this the right way? When they begin to dominate what was originally a living relationship, and the field turns into an inner explanation, then we create complexity. The triangle is thought about and rather than carried, and the tension is resolved into understanding, and the field loses then the effectiveness that properly belongs to the etheric level. On the other hand, the distortion through simplification means that the tension in an energetic sense is avoided. Some people, some of us, almost automatically avoid this tension and tend to make everything equal. That is, without distinction. And the assumption then is that everyone feels the same, or means the same, and does the same. And the subtle tension between the 3 points is then not entered into, but smoothed over. As a result, the triangle loses its structure and collapses into a vague sense of togetherness, which is not meant to be. The triangle becomes a unity, but no longer a working field. So summarizing, in one case, the tension is explained away, and the other, it is avoided. But in both cases, it is not carried. And that is precisely what deprives the triangle of its organizing power.
Okay, thank you so much, Jana. This is again an excellent deepening and a bit an extension to your explanation. I see one hand up, David. David tries. Could we give you the floor?
Oh, I just wanted to point out something interesting that I learned reading the books of the Tibetan, that the triangle is the most stable form in the universe. And in that extending, also when we form a triangle, we also subjectively eventually uh, link ourselves to cosmic triangles. So as we grow in consciousness, we will sometime in the future be aware of cosmic triangles. I just thought I'd throw that out.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. I think Jana mentioned in her talks that in a way the triangles are related through the three Buddhas, which of course are on rather cosmic levels than on our more earthly bound levels. But thank you very much for your comment. If there are no there is one other hand. So let's just give the floor to Ellie Heitsu, if I pronounce that correct.
Hi, you did. Wow. I just had the insight that it seems to me the principles of oversimplifying versus overanalyzing could really apply to everything. And I sit here, I'm in mid Florida, and I'm watching birds, and I'm watching a neighborhood cat, and I'm watching a lemon tree. And you could take any of those things as a form and get very complex about it, or you could really oversimplify it. And part of it's just the position I like to take when I'm centered and balanced is just observing, being the each of us as God's perceptive mechanisms, God living through each of us. And anyway, it just seems universally applicable. So that's my comment. Thank you so much for today's presentation and work.
Thank you, Ellie, for your comment. I think in a way it is true that you can apply this to almost everything. At the other end, I think it is important that we here focus on our triangle work, which we always have to be alert that it doesn't just become a habit which we do each time in the morning or in the evening, whenever you do it. So I really appreciated the more deeper thoughts and analysis, especially of our triangles, and I hope that tomorrow and in the days which are coming, we will try to apply this in our own triangle works. So thanks once again. I think we will now go to the meditation. Let me just see. To the meditation. Energizing the planetary network. Stage 1, we come together as a group unity on the mental plane. We identify as a soul with the world group functioning through three planetary centers, London, Geneva, and New York, as a triangle of light. Extend identification through the soul to the new group of world servers, to the hierarchy, and to the Christ, the transcendent point of synthesis at the center of every triangle, and to the triangle of energy standing behind the Christ. And then identify the center Shambhala, the center of purpose and power. Recognize the synthesis of three streams of cosmic energy within Shambhala, where the will of God is known, using the dedication in the center of the will of God I stand. Naught shall deflect my will from His. I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve my fellow men. Then we visualize a network of lighted triangles underlying the entire outer world of physical life and events. We see the network A linking all triangle units and relating all points of light throughout the world. B. Relating the world of spiritual realities, the hierarchy, to the world of experience, humanity, and acting as a channel of distribution within humanity for the spiritual energies pouring through the hierarchy. C. Transforming the planetary etheric vehicle to receive and circulate the energies of the soul and the triad, will, love, light. realize that the energies of light, love, and the will to good, evoked by all triangle workers, pulsating through the planetary network of triangles, are having an inevitable effect within the three worlds, mental, emotional, and etheric, of human evolution, lifting human consciousness and helping to create a path of light for the feet of the Christ. Then reflect on the purpose, function, and right development of the triangles network as a hierarchical activity. Blended with the group, stand with positive intent as a station of radiant light within the network of light and goodwill. And through conclude, we sound the adapted great invocation, directing the triple energies through the triangles network and throughout the consciousness of humanity. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
It's a bird.
Thank you all so much for your participation on this webinar, and thanks to Janne for your very inspiring and profound contribution. We close with some announcements of coming events. Yes, there we are. You can read them on the slide which you see. Just note that the Aquarius full moon is on a Sunday, so the times are slightly different than we usually have. Once again, thank you very, very much.